Welcome everyone to Insights installment number 9. Today's subject is when you should actually take this godforsaken exam. So there's a short and long answer, as there is to almost everything in the legal profession and anything kind of satellite to that. Short answer is October. That's my recommendation. Over the past 15 years of teaching, the vast majority of my students who have broken the 170 mark got that high score on the October exam. And this counts both the paper and the flex versions. So the longer answer is there's a bit more to it than just take the exam in October. Your very first real exam can be any time of the year. I just advise you to take that first real exam 1 to 1.5 years before you plan to take your last real exam. So this 12 to 18th month timetable, that will allow you to study more steadily, doing well with just a couple of hours a day max, with plenty of room for days off. And more importantly though, life happens. Illness, death in the family, moving, holidays, you name it. A whole bunch of things kind of come together, and sometimes they seem to conspire to really break down your study habits. For a lot of folks, the real damage of these life events isn't the raw time off you need to take to handle whatever it is the event was, but losing momentum. That's the big thing. Losing momentum, then needing to ramp back up to get back into your groove can take a lot of time and aggravation, which, of course, if that sort of life-shattering event happens close enough to your exam, you just really may not have enough time to get back into your groove. I like to say that the LSAT is just as much physical as it is mental. It's not like you forget all the techniques and the know-how during a break, but just that feeling of this is about as hard and fast as I need to push myself on a given question or a given section. That to me is very real, and it's also very easily lost, and takes some time and effort to regain. So why October? That's a big question that I get a lot. I wish I knew for sure. I don't. This is not really a scientific thing beyond just the raw data for my personal students that tells me that just seems to be the ideal time. I do have some general guesses as to why this might be. Most of you, unsurprisingly, are undergrads. And while some of you go to schools on the quarter system, apologies if you do, most of you are on the semester system. And on the semester system, October just seems to be at a good time in the academic calendar. The initial scheduling and moving madness of the early semester is probably at least a couple of weeks in the past, and for a lot of you, midterm studying hasn't really reached fever pitch quite yet. Also, those of my students who did crack 170 in October didn't just appear out of nowhere a month or two before. They've generally been studying for at least a full calendar year before coming to me for October. So maybe not a full calendar year, but we're talking like more than half a year, 6 to 12 months really, which is a significant amount of time. There's also the issue of self-selection in my student pool. My $100 an hour rate is higher than average, although given inflation and just the fact that prices keep going up on everything, the gap is probably closing a bit. On top of what Law Hub and all the other programs are already taking away from your wallet. So people who find me or get referred to me are generally pretty serious, and they likely think they have a very good shot at a 170 plus and have acted and prepared accordingly. So the next question is, if October is ideal, fine, we don't really know quite why that is. Why do I give the 12 to 18th month window of preparation? So I already went over the big one on the very first slide, the ability to deal with study breaks, yet still having enough time to recover. That's kind of the big key there. And for me personally, those of you who have been following my content from the very beginning will know the story, but I'll try to condense it here. I actually had the luxury of sitting for my first real exam a full 2 years prior to when I wanted to take it for real. So aside from the huge extra bonus that I had for being able to actually teach the LSAT during those intervening 2 years, I just didn't need to study for a billion hours every week to get where I wanted to go. I wasn't quite conscious of it at the time, but that space also allowed me to really formulate a plan that fit me. I didn't have to. Sure, I was teaching for Kaplan, so I was kind of by default going with the Kaplan curriculum. But for those of you who have touched a Kaplan program, the Big Purple Machine is great for kind of middle tier scores. But for me, I was shooting for 170 plus. Ideally a 180. That was kind of a goal. The Big Purple Machine just wasn't going to cut it, and so I was looking around at other other opportunities. I probably could have shrugged it off as sort of competitor research if I really wanted to do it at the same time that I was actually teaching Kaplan stuff. But yeah, I mean, I looked at Kaplan stuff and I knew from the inside that just wasn't going to work. And I looked at a lot of other things that were, currently in the market, and none of those things really seemed to fit my needs either. Not that there was anything wrong with them; they just weren't working for me. The way the filters that are given through those programs just wasn't the way that I saw the exam. It just wasn't efficient. So having that 2 year period myself to prepare, I spent the majority of that kind of making my own approach to the exam. So yeah, I mean, I didn't have to look at any of those other curricula, including the one that I was teaching my students, and I didn't feel like I have to do the whole thing. I was able to develop that hard to put into words sense of this sort of language pattern gets me every time, or hey, it actually looks like not every last two answers dilemma I get stuck in works out the same way. So I could just do what I saw I needed to do as I was doing practice material. And the huge variety of fancy techniques and other valid testing expertise out there, it didn't intimidate or scare me one bit. It didn't really invade my time or attention. So we've talked about the ideal time, allegedly October, and sort of the ideal overall timetable, 12 to 18 months. An important sort of flip side of that is when not to take your for real exam. And that would be a simple answer for me, January. Back in the olden days of only the paper and pencil exam that was only administered 4 times a year, the dubious honor of worst test ever, according to me, was a spot taken up by the February exam. But with Flex and all that, the January exam is even worse. So why is that? It's due to what I call the wrath of the fourth quarter. The biggest thing is holidays. Even for the most anti or asocial of you, it's nearly impossible to avoid all the end of year madness that goes on. So from like a religious and social aspect, every major cultural tradition has something going on this time of year, and your family, friends, the world itself will think it's a good idea to intrude on your space and attack your study plans. Of course, they don't do that on purpose for the most part, but it's just what happens. Also, another thing that's actually something that a lot of people don't think about, especially for those of you who are still young, people around you literally die, at least in America. The CDC tells us that more people die in December, January, and February than any other time of the year. And not only does the sort of raw health data tell us this, I have actually seen this happen again and again to students. And it's not like, and I know they're not just making it up because I'm not their professor and I'm not grading them. They don't have to lie to me. If you're going to be honest with anybody about just random stuff, it would be somebody like me who there's no skin in the game for either of us, and so I know for a fact, not just on a trust basis, but I actually literally know that some of these folks did pass away because I knew them personally. My students have had people important in their lives pass away as they're preparing for the January exam after the winter semester or the fall semester is kind of wrapped up, and they think, okay, I've got a good solid clean couple of weeks to study, and then somebody dies, and it's real. It happens. I've seen it happen countless times. Well, not countless times. I could probably count if I wanted to, but you get the point. It does actually happen. And so, in a probably related note, people also get sick this time of year, and this directly affects you. It's not just people around you dying, it's you getting sick. You might think, oh, I'll just power through it, and perhaps you can to a limited extent. But illness really does destroy your ability to maintain your groove, and that sort of groove, that feeling of, I know how hard to push, I know about when I need to kind of move on, all those sort of unspoken yet very important things that you train yourself to do. That's what goes away when you get sick. So let's say November didn't work out for you, and you look at your calendar and you think, oh, hey, I have like 6 solid weeks before January to get ready. No, you don't. Nobody ever does. You're probably looking at maybe 3 weeks at best of real study, and the rest of the time is you fighting the wrath and desperately trying to recover what it took away from you. I do want to close off this sort of, big unendorsement of January with a disclaimer. I don't actually know what the data says. It's entirely possible that, due to the magic of statistics and the bell curve distribution, that pretty much every single administration exam looks more or less the same. So, I mean, that's always a possibility. However, all I can speak from is my limited exposure to a particular slice of the testing pool, and it's been universally ugly, so I do feel like I have to share this information with you. Again, I am not making any statements about the overall statistical distribution of this exam versus the others, but I mean, this is just what I have seen personally. So a suggested timeline then. So we know so far that October, historically for my students, has turned out the best. Historically, a 12 to 18th month period seems to give people enough wiggle room to study steadily, and not get overwhelmed by unexpected life events. So what is that 12 to 18th month period? What should you do within there? Well, this is what I suggest. If I had to do it again myself, I'd take my very first exam in September, October, or November of my second year of undergrad. That would pretty much put you at a full 2 calendar years out before your real exam. Or June of the following year, so at the tail end of my second year of undergrad. While waiting for that score to come in, I'd use that time to shop around for materials and curricula for roughly 3 weeks that you have to wait for the score to come out. In that time, I'd also purchase Law Hub, which is kind of no-brainer. Actually, I don't even know if you have to purchase Law Hub before registering for the exam. It's been a while since I've seen like the consumer end of that website, so apologies if my information isn't fully current. But yeah, I mean, if you haven't already, that's definitely something you should do in that waiting period. So when that score comes out, I use that score to help set some boundaries on my goal score and what level of study that I feel is realistic for me to reach that. This would be a great time to reach out for a free consultation with a tutor to get some guidance if you feel lost on where you need to go. After that, so after that 3 week period, I have my score. I've maybe talked to somebody. I have some idea of what score I feel is reasonable for me to attain with the level of practice that I'm willing and realistically going to put in. At that point, I would begin a period of self study for 2 months with just Law Hub, without any other programs. During this time, I'd prioritize developing my own mental language for what's going on. So sure, every curriculum has, and it's kind of standardized over the years, but everyone has their proprietary way of talking about various things. But before getting those other systems to bias you, try to develop your own sort of mental language for what you're looking at. And during that time, that 2 months of self study, I would draw only from older exams. These are absolutely ancient, but like prep test 20 through 49. I'd maybe do roughly 2 exams from the mid 50s just to get exposure to stuff like comparative reading. But really, this is just more about grinding through sections at this point. I'd mostly, like I said, I'd mostly do sections for practice, mostly untimed, with occasional time sections just to make sure that I'm picking that up, and maybe one fully timed exam every other week. So over those 2 months, that would amount to what, like four full length exams timed. The point is really not to get score data from that. I mean, you can, but it's really just to make sure that you are continue to expose yourself to the actual sort of experience of a full length exam. And after that 2 month self study period, I should have a much clearer idea of what sections need attention, as well as the kinds of things that bother me when I'm taking a section. And so again, I might not be the most at this point, since I haven't looked at other curricula. Um, you slash the hypothetical me in this situation, we might not have all the proprietary terms to efficiently describe what our problems are. And that's kind of what professional help is for. But at the very least, you'll be in a much better position to tell this tutor or whoever you're getting help with, what's going on and what you'd like to see done. And so this would be a good time to continue to choose self-study. And again, because I am largely a self-study person, I can tell you that works. It works, and it's probably not out of reach for more of you than you might expect. Or get back in touch with a tutor. If you're not confident, you can go it alone. Either get another free consultation from somebody else, or see if the person you initially talked to is willing to talk to you for like 20 minutes to half an hour, again for free, or just a token cost, whatever the case may be. Get back in touch with professional help if you feel like that's what you need. So after that, initial. So we're 3 months in roughly. So you took your first sort of practice real LSAT. Um, you sat for the real exam. You waited 3 weeks to get your score. You bought Law Hub, and then now exclusively with Law Hub, you've studied for 2 months with older exams, and now you've decided that either you're going to continue self-study or you are going to work with a tutor, or a curriculum, whatever that might be. What do you do? I mean, at this point, it opens up. It really depends. At this stage, you have an idea of what sections need attention, as well as some sense of what's going on at the micro level in terms of on a question or section by section, or even a passage or game basis, what's going wrong and what's going right with you. So what you do with that can take a wide array of forms, and that's why the 10-ish months that you have left are so great. You can plan around things you see coming and deal with things that you didn't. So let's say you really want to workshop, LG, but the semester is starting up again, or you have a big paper that's due, that sort of thing. You can sort of plan on using your time more efficiently, in the sense that you know what you need to study, and also what you need to study around. Those two things are very important to have hands. And so another question that you might have at this point is, what if my situation looks nothing like that? Which is possible if you have found this video, partway through your own personal situation. It happens. You just have to deal with reality as it is. That's sort of the crappy reality of life, right? The tough truth is that some of you will have really painted yourself into a corner. Like you have to take the exam this coming January, or a calendar year from now, because it is January 2023 at the time of this video. You can't afford a gap year, so you can't really wait to take it at a better time, and you haven't really studied in the most focused manner, etc., etc. All number of bad things have happened. I mean, sorry, that's all I can say. There's really not a whole lot you could do. If you have to take the exam, you don't have the opportunity to extend it with more time, and you just haven't had the best opportunity to use that time, what time you did have. I mean, there's nothing we could do at this point. The rest of you, though, you probably have a bit more wiggle room. Get a free consultation. Me, I myself, and just about every other serious tutor out there offers one. If you're feeling squeezed and you need. And that's it. This is another short one. So again, pandering to the algorithm here. Thanks for watching, everybody. Like and subscribe. That helps the channel. Helps you reach more people. All that good stuff. And feel free to reach out to this email address on the screen here, shycity180@gmail.com, if you have any further questions about this specific subject or anything with the exam. And of course, as always, tutoring inquiries should always be directed to that email. And thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.